I'm Fatheree,
This is Dave.
and this is Tex-Trek.
Engage.
Welcome back aboard the Starship Texas for the 143rd installment of the Tex-Trek podcast, the home for Star Trek fandom from deep in the heart of Texas, where we talk deep about Star Trek, and lately we've been talking deep about Deep Space Nine. So we're finishing up season 3 right now. This is our third part talking about season 3.
We had a sneaky little side gig with the Star Trek Communist.
Yes, so if you want to check out Will Wynn weighing in on past tense, go check out Tex-Trek 142. But yeah, this will close our season 3 discussions, which is Dave. If you want to remind everyone, you are seeing for the first time.
Absolutely. This is all new to me. I'm actually now starting to get into a place where previously, because I hadn't seen any of it, I was like, if I hear a spoiler here and there, no biggie. But now I'm pretty invested, and now if I hear a spoiler, I'll kill people.
Well, you might want to stay off the memory alpha
if,
Pages. Like, they're gonna...
I know, I almost saw
things.
Something, I was just looking at the show notes, and they're like, this is the last appearance of this character until his death, and I'm like, what? No! No, I know I'm going to hit a few spoilers like that, but I'm not even going to talk about the ones that I've kind of come up against, because then I can kind of let them fade to the background of my mind, and sometimes they just go away. So it's handy to be forgetful sometimes. But I have to say, although I've been enjoying the whole run on DS9, I think I actually just overall somehow liked this little section that we'll be covering best. There were a few episodes, we'll talk about them, that I was not as big into. That's some of the Ferengi stuff. But you know what? Man, when it was good, which was a whole bunch of this stuff, it's been really good. So I'm down for it. I'm ready to talk about it.
Well, I said when we talked about the first half of season 3, there's only 2 season 3 episodes that I actually dislike, and one of them we covered back then. The one that we're going to talk about today, though, I wonder if you'll guess which one it is. But yeah, the other one is today. But if we get to season 4 eventually, the cool thing about season 4 is there's only one episode I dislike.
Oh, interesting. When you do the little summaries of each of the episodes as we blow through them, I'm going to try and guess before you say which one is the one that didn't connect with you. I bet I can guess it.
Okay. Well, we'll just go ahead and get started right now with season 3, episode 14. That's where we're starting. We're going episode 14 until episode 26, but we're starting with Heart of Stone. Searching for a Maquis raider on an unstable moon, Kira is trapped in an expanding crystal formation that threatens to engulf her if Odo cannot set her free. Meanwhile, Nog attempts to persuade a skeptical Commander Benjamin Sisko to write him a letter of recommendation to join Starfleet Academy. So yeah, we had like that cool B story here with Nog and Sisko cutting back and forth to Odo and Kira in the cave. And a big surprise twist ending was that was a founder. It was the main founder that we met in the Search parts 1 and 2, imitating Kira.
I'm sure I'll come back to this, but there's any number of episodes that start getting like, oh, am I looking at the real person or a fake version of them or a simulation episodes of Deep Space Nine? Now, it makes sense because the founders increasingly build as the paranoia of infiltration. Which I didn't know. That was actually really cool. You'd think it'd be obvious with shape changers, but they had not been playing that up. They were mostly playing up the military might of the Dominion. So that's been kind of a neat little surprise as the season has gone on, and we'll talk about it a lot more in the last episode. But I love this. This is a great starter episode, or well, not starter episode, but start to this half of the season anyway. I was thinking about, Fatheree. This is one of those science fiction is really cool to me episodes because on one level I know that this is a couple of actors in like a paper mache cave with like prop crystal stuff all over them and just talking to each other, more like a one act play. But the emotions that they raise are so intense, both from Kira and especially at the end from Odo, that I feel like it's almost some of the peak acting from both those actors and some really intense stuff.
It played to both of their strengths very well.
It did.
Like Nanav Visitors is very good at being like tortured and miserable, and Renee is incredible at being like conflicted and like deeply sympathetic, but he's like scared to show it, and like all like that stuff that we think of with Odo. He's such a master, just conveying it in his face, like the pain. And
well, he's mostly very stoic, so it's like in these moments where we see him break down and become agitated and become terrified or whatever, it's like really kind of moving. I don't know if there's like kind of this is one of the most intense things I've ever seen with him is after he confesses his love to her, and then he's like slumps down as if he's been physically stricken, like he can't even bear it, like he's going to die of saying it.
Yeah.
And for Odo, that feels like it could be true.
Yeah, such a physical performance.
Mm-hmm. Actually, there's a few more episodes in this season where, for various reasons, he kind of gets to put on some different personas and things like that. And so I think that probably had to be, those moments had to be exciting for Renee portraying the character. But this was kind of a puzzle episode too, and like they played fair. They gave you the clues early on as to what was going on. Like, how come we never are seeing this other person supposedly running around in the caves? And Odo immediately is like, oh, and why did they miss you from such close range? Oh, just lucky, I guess. Like, all the clues are there, but I think I kind of forgot about them because of the intensity of the emotional performances. She is slowly swallowed up by this crystalline structure that he just can't stop. Which I'm sure was the exact intent. But I thought that was really cool.
And it's a cool exercise in challenging your character and like really giving them a bunch of heartache without just like having the bad guy beat him up. Odo still wins at the end. He still goes into like detective Odo mode and solves the mystery, figures it out. He solved the case. But you still get all of the important drama of seeing him basically like tortured under the weight of his emotions that he goes through. So I think it was cool that like they pull that off, but without just making like your hero just getting like the shit kicked out of him, which sometimes they do when they want to tell these types of stories.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a innovative way to do it, and it's like as a plot, it's the kind of thing that it's very Star Trek-y, very high melodrama, a weird science fiction-y thing happening. By the way, if I was Odo, after how emotionally wrenching that was, I would never fucking forgive the founders for that kind of head game shit. I would never do it. It was even worse because, like, he confessed his love and then it wasn't even to her. Meaning that if it were to ever happen again, and I'm guessing so, he'll have to do it a second time. I'm like, oh my god, man.
How painful is that at the end when Kira said, so how did you know? What gave it away that like that wasn't me? And it hurts to even like try to remember this, but when Odo says, oh, she said something that I knew you would never say. And she's like, what was it? And he's like, just a slip of the tongue, nothing important. It's like Odo won't even like allow himself to like entertain that. He's convinced like there's no hope there in pursuing Kira, and so it just hurts to have it framed that way and laid out by Odo.
He goes back to the stoic by episode's end. Mm-hmm. It's and there's another performance going on in this in the B plot.
And this is one of Aaron Eisenberg's favorite episodes. The scene
Oh, yeah.
between Avery Brooks and Aaron Eisenberg in the DS9 documentary. He actually talks about this being like his favorite moment on the show. It's when Captain Sisko is trying to get Nog to confess, like, well, what are you really getting at? What's your scheme? Why are you actually trying to join Starfleet? And it's the part where like Avery Brooks grabs Aaron Eisenberg by the arms and it's kind of like shaking him, like tell me the truth. What is going on here? Because he wasn't expecting Avery to do that, and when it happened, he felt like that teed him up to deliver a great performance in reaction to it.
Like it felt real to him. It's it's like how they talk about actors playing off of each other, but he didn't know that was coming. That's interesting.
And a lot of like really good actors, you'll hear other actors say like, "Oh yeah, they're so fun to work with because I get to react to what they're doing."
Mm-hmm.
And so Avery Brooks was kind of able to improve Aaron Eisenberg's performance by giving him something to react to.
That's super cool. And honestly, he had some great lines. Him, a lot of times, of course, the Ferengis are played for pure humor. Their mercenary capitalism is just kind of like, their wacky quirks sometimes. But Nog kind of lays it out on the line how, kind of embarrassed and painful it is for him to see his father groveling for Quark. Of course, Rom will get some great stuff before this season is out, too, including in this episode. Isn't this the one where he, like, sort of stands up to Quark when Quark tries to forbid it? He tries to forbid him.
And it happens again later.
Yeah, when Rom stands up for his kid in this, though, it's in some ways the first real time we've seen him surprise Quark with, like, his technical expertise, but we haven't quite seen him stand up ever until this episode, so my heart was in my throat. The only problem I had with the episode, it's not necessarily a problem, is that it's another one of those where a big dramatic moment turned out to be an illusory one. So this seemed like it was Odo's big reveal to Kira, and it wasn't. And that Kira, by the way, this is the other big thing. She did, I thought, some amazing acting. The Nana Visitor, and so I was disappointed that was a changeling imitating her acting. Imitating her anguish.
That changeling is a good actor.
But yes, they did a really good job. So kudos to them. I don't know about this hiring of scabs, but whatever. No, but it's really like I can't really fault it. It's I thought it was an excellent standalone episode.
Yeah, and the only other things I have to add are just like some little minor things. Like there's some good miniature shots in Deep Space Nine, like that shot of the runabout parked outside of the cave. One of the few times we actually see a runabout land. Most of the time they just beam down.
Oh, interesting, yeah.
But that was a cool, practical special effect. And then we get some Odo talking about the kayaking with O'Brien, and there was like an ongoing joke, like on Next Generation, like O'Brien had like shoulder injuries from kayaking, and like he like keeps doing like these kayaking programs, and
so that goes all the way back to TNG.
Yeah, but the idea of like Louie being an ancient Earth sea chanty, it's just one of those like dumb things, like when they call like Beastie Boys classical music and stuff like that. Well, let's move on to episode 15, Destiny. An ancient Bajoran prophecy of doom complicates the first joint Bajoran, Cardassian, and Federation science mission, an attempt to establish a permanent communications link through the wormhole. They kind of follow up on the treaty that Kai Wynn was able to negotiate with the Cardassians, thanks to Vedic Bareil, who literally died doing it to pull it off. But yeah, we have this joint science mission. We have the Cardassian women that come aboard the station. I have some really strong memories of watching this for the first time as a kid for some reason. But Dave, how did you feel about watching this one now?
I didn't like it.
Oh no.
I'm curious why this particular episode stood out, although I just know sometimes first episodes and certain episodes of, say, TOS stand out for me when I was watching them back when. But here's the thing. It's a prophecy episode. And it's maybe the prophecy is true episode. And the fact that they do bring up, like, especially when, is it Kira, when she's kind of like, okay, Benjamin, if you're going to be all rational about this, let me put it in terms you'll understand. Our gods, space aliens, if you want to call them that, she says, like, they exist in all spans of time because they do see all time at once. And I'm like, okay, that's a decent case for it. But broadly, I don't like the idea of building superstition in Sisko's life. Although there's something that'll happen in another episode, like him. I know they want to move forward the story of him as the emissary, and there's some other stuff that happens in the season that I like better along those lines. But yeah, I don't know. That kind of put me off. Well, maybe the prophecy is real. Maybe magic is real.
What is real? It was real. Like, that guy did see it. This is the conclusion they draw at the end.
Yeah, I didn't like that. But
they're literally aliens that can see the future.
Right, but like, here's the thing: is like, I want them to dive deeper if they're going to do that. Like, why did they seed the prophecy? Why speak in the language of poetry and allegory?
Written by a 3,000 year ago Bajoran who didn't know like what comet fragments were.
But like, what purpose did it even serve? I guess it ultimately pushed, the emissary to do it, 3,000 years later, but why do it so indirectly? What's served by that? I think I would have liked if there was some hint. I know that I don't want him to like answer it, just say, well, that is the reason they did it. But if they kind of had some guesswork about it, I think going a little deeper would have made me more interested in it.
That's interesting. I actually really don't care that much about the Bajoran prophecy stuff in this episode, other than the stuff that it reveals about Sisko and Kira. Like, Kira confesses that she does consider Sisko the emissary. It's kind of the first time she admits that to him. But what I like about this episode is the Cardassian stuff, and the subplot with Galora, I believe is her name, and O'Brien,
aka Cat Grant from the old New Adventures of Lois and Clark in the 90s, right?
Well,
Tracy Scoggins. But here, the actress who played her on the show is doing being one of a sympathetic Cardassian, which is, I like seeing that variety in them, and that was something I did like about it too.
And I like that, they show up and they're so nice and friendly. Like, when Sisko meets them, he's like, "Those are the two friendliest Vipers I've ever met." And then that rivalry between Galora and O'Brien, that was Cardassian flirtation. For whatever reason, that really stood out to me as a kid. And I was, apologies to Keiko, but I was so sad that O'Brien has to turn her down. I don't know why that bothered me so much, but I feel like even now when I watch this, and I know it's coming, I feel so sorry for her.
Yeah, well, was she that into it, or was she just taken by in the moment?
No, there's a moment earlier when they're arguing, when they're doing some of the modifications. And O'Brien is kind of mad at her, and he, being grumpy O'Brien, he snaps at her, hand me the laser torch and give me some room. And then she hands the tool to O'Brien, and then he goes to work, and you see her in the background is kind of all giddy. So they were planting. If you rewatch this, you see indications that she's actually into him. And that kiss on the cheek when she's like, Keiko is a very lucky woman. No, she actually dug O'Brien.
I think we talked about this previously, but Deep Space Nine is proving to have almost my ideal Star Trek structure, even though 26 episodes is too long for a season. But if you're going to have that...
That was a requirement
Sure,
then.
Yeah, I'm only judging it through modern eyes. But the way that each episode will build on the other ones and that they will reference it, and so that the communications relay that they build in this will end up, playing subsequent roles... And they build on things in small ways from that the episodes still stand alone, but it also moved the emissary story forward. That you can have a standalone episode that both references small continuity and sets it up the relay stuff, and larger continuity the Prophet stories. I don't know. That to me is just like a perfect balance that they're hitting. Even in an episode I wasn't super wild about, it did make me think how much I like that balance.
And that's what I always talk about to you when we do all these conversations about the serialization versus episodic style of TV. I always talk about, like, my favorite is like the hybrid model. And that's actually something that, like, Joe Michael Straczynski was trying to do in the 90s on Babylon 5. That was like his goal. He didn't do it as well as Deep Space Nine, but that was his objective, and I think Deep Space Nine handles that a little bit.
You trying to rile up the B5 fans again?
They're already mad at me. So
I know.
And
you dared to praise B5 in a way that wasn't quite right. But yes, now that I'm seeing it in action, I'm compelled to agree with you. And I know that they even want to do that in some ways on, like, Picard and Discovery. They have a much tighter time limit. And I think the fact that they're so focused on sort of having a central threat, a true big bad in the Buffy style, is almost always to their detriment.
Yes.
So, all right, shall we move on to Ferengi business?
Yeah. So our next episode, Prohet Motive. Grand Nagus Zek has become a philanthropist, and Quark worries that he may have gone insane. Bashir is nominated for a prestigious medical award.
This episode was not my favorite. I'm not as big into the Ferengi episodes as you are. Sometimes they work for me. I loved Quark on Kronos on Trial and all that. This one I was not as big on, but there was some good stuff in it. I was laughing my ass off when they try and the early attempts to decode the benevolent what do they call it? Rules of acquisition.
Yeah.
If never keep profit, a good smile, honesty.
Yeah. What does it mean? Absolutely nothing.
Was that the first word of every rule?
The first word every rule, yeah.
That was great. And at some point, Quark is literally licking the book, I believe. Like, as if, like, that's, like, some kind of final test. Maybe he can figure out something by licking it. I don't know quite what he was doing. I have to think that was just improvised on the spot, but it made me laugh.
Well, speaking of it being improvised on the spot, this episode was directed by Rene Auberjonois. I can't say his last name. His French is hard for me. But, apologize and rest in peace. But he not only directs this episode, but he'll direct more Ferengi stories, and actually, like, a super serious, super dark episode in a future season coming up.
Oh, interesting.
So I guess he was, like, a good director for some of the comedic Ferengi stuff, because they use him for that again later.
You know, as an aside, when I was looking up notes on this, I saw that it came from a premise that was originally part of an episode that Ira Steven Bear had written for the old TV show Taxi, you know, the 3 or 4 season show sitcom from like late 70s, early 80s.
Mm-hmm. I'm pretty amused by Benevolent Zek. Right from the beginning when Quark is trying to get some umox from that girl that he's also going to be able to, like, offload his useless self-sealing stem bolts on.
Right.
And then like Zek shows up, like, ruins that, and then he's like, I couldn't let you take advantage of that young female, and all the Zek stuff made me laugh.
That's Wallace Shawn, is that the guy?
Yes. Yeah. Inconceivable.
Yep. This one was a little one note for me. There was a few sort of early on in the 13 episodes second half. I guess I did hit a few episodes that were just meh. And then there's like a whole bunch in a row that I really, really like. But like, it's not my favorite Ferengi episode. It was a little bit of a slog. And I didn't love the B subplot either, with Bashir worried that he's up for an award. Is this the one where it's the award that's usually given to, like, retired scientists?
Yeah, it's like
old
people. It's because it's typically for, like, a big lifetime achievement.
Right, and he's like, he's only on the cusp of hitting 30. The good doctor.
He's nominated for his work in biomolecular replication, which I guess was, like, it was really impressive because it put him in the running with these other people.
Yeah. I did like that. Even that will be referenced in some episodes to come too. It's just another one of those kind of cool
Yeah.
little things.
There's some big Bashir reveals coming up.
So apparently the prophets, I forget exactly why they grabbed the Grand Nagus,
Because he came into
but
their wormhole to like ask them for like he wanted to pull like a Biff from Back to the Future and see
right,
the
right,
future.
and
And
they
they're
basically devolved him to like an earlier type of Ferengi when they were less aggressively, capitalist.
yeah.
And I was like, well, that's kind of messed up that they're just going to be doing that kind of stuff. I don't know what kind of gods these are, but people who just go and rearrange people like that, not somebody I would want to venerate.
Well,
But
they
I'm not.
were
I'm not
I mean
Bajoran.
like Zek was probably a lot to handle, so like
Well, he's a piece of shit. So I'm sure he was.
they
Um,
referenced the baseball talk from the first episode when Sisko explained linear time. Uh
oh man, yeah,
and
yeah,
like you don't know what the if the next pitch will be a ball or a strike or will he hit a home run, like you don't know, and we enjoy watching that unfold. And they're like, yeah, so why did this linear being want to see the game before it happens? Like that's not what the Cisco taught us. And
yeah. Interesting. Yeah.
the other thing I like about this episode is that Quark gives the Gordon Gekko from Wall Street greed is good talk to
Mhm.
the prophets. And they
Yeah.
actually like they're very dismissive of it.
Yeah.
But they go ahead and like honor Quark's request because he was like, if you do this to me too, we're just gonna keep sending more and more Ferengi. And they're just like, we really don't want to deal with these people. Okay, we'll just like turn them back and like get them out of here.
Yeah. It's honestly, in its way, it's a very sort of Greek gods take. I do like gods with sort of personality, and this allowed for them to have a little bit of fun with the prophets. I think one of my favorite small bits in it was that isn't this one where we found out Rom has been like embezzling at
Oh
the
yeah,
end?
yeah, at the end.
It's
And I love that final scene because we get to see, for it to like really be funny for me. And I understand like some people don't find this funny; it's just a little too much. But for me, the what really like clinches it is at the end when Zek reverts back to like normal Zek, and he's just like an
mhm.
asshole again. and
Yeah.
and even like his manservant Maher Do is like all like happy though, and he's like, yay, we got him back. I served my master well.
It's sort of sitcom style. Let's jump on to was it Visionary?
Yes, which I think opens with the dartboard that they introduced in Prohet Motive. So
Yep.
again, that's more like use of that continuity. But yes, Visionary, episode 17. After receiving a minor dose of radiation poisoning, O'Brien inexplicably begins experiencing a series of jumps into the near future. Meanwhile, a Romulan delegation arrives on the station, expecting an intelligence report on the Dominion. So Dave, if you don't like seeing like fake out stuff that like doesn't really count, this episode might have really bothered you because we see O'Brien die 3 different times in this episode, but
It's not the
it never
fake.
stuck.
It's only when they aren't who I think they are,
Okay.
maybe. Like, and like they get some meaty scenes. That's why I like the scene where Garrick seemed to die in the other one. It was just like a good scene. I was like, oh. Anyway, this Father, I was going to ask, since you told me about this concept, is this an O'Brien must suffer episode?
Yes, yeah, this is an O'Brien must suffer episode. It's also a timey wimey. I really enjoy time travel. I enjoy like temporal anomalies and time distortions and stuff like that. So I like that element of it. But overall, I kind of consider this as like a little bit of a more mediocre episode. I probably should like it more because I like Romulans, I like Klingons. It has all of that stuff. It has section 47 is where O'Brien was killed by that booby trap, and I love the
Yeah,
47s.
right.
But
It's
for
like
whatever
they're
reason,
catered to you.
yeah, this is just kind of a mediocre episode for me.
So,
But
just so
what
you
do you
know,
think?
I actually did like the episode. I think it there because there's like I like suspense, and this had an immediate like, can he stop something bad that's going to happen that very day, and may include his death. And I kind of like the weirdness of it, like his little time jumps always putting him like right next to himself. That was kind of cool and weird. And the way that they would like sometimes at a certain point became aware of it. But it also did feel to me kind of like a TNG high concept episode, and so in that sense it felt a little retrograde. And I wonder if that might have been something that, like you said, it felt a little mediocre, and a little bit, like it did feel a little bit just like, hey, let's just explore this idea.
I would like to point out that the story this episode was based on was by Ethan H. Koch, who
Mhm.
was from Texas, so one of the few Texans that get writers credits on Star Trek.
Nice.
It happens
Oh.
a few times.
I think I found like the ending satisfying, which is something that is a drum beat that I'll sound for a lot of these Deep Space Nine episodes. Is I feel like they tend to end their episodes more satisfyingly than a lot of other Trek episodes end for me. And what was it a Romulan covert operation to
The Klingons. Oh yeah, they were both being covert because the Romulans wanted
right,
to blow up the Bajorn's wormhole.
right. There's a bit where Odo spells it out to Sisko about how he like discovered the Klingon covert team. And are they the ones that they've just been drunk and rowdy, but it's like a cover, right?
Yes, they're actually there to attack the Romulans. Odo, it was actually the episode before this. It was in Prohet Motive with the Dr. Bashir and the Federation Council who decides who wins the medical award. Odo had that friend at Starfleet Intelligence who had a spouse who had a cousin who had another friend, type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But then here Odo is like, oh yeah, I have like a friend at like the Klingon intelligence who's like out of favor with the current administration there, and so they're setting up that Odo has like this big spy network.
Yeah. For a guy who's not very social, he does seem to be pretty good at professional contacts. And
Yes.
I loved when he starts to do the long version of it, and Sisko's like, cut to the chase, or like he's like, why? He's like, why were you taking so long? And he's like, sometimes I have to remind you just how good I am.
Yeah.
It's nice
He wanted
to see
to show
Odo
his work.
taking a little pride. Yeah.
and we do get more in season 3, both from those characters, both from Odo and Sisko. They're both a little bit more home, a little bit more chummy with the rest of the crew.
It's true. It's true. There's a question that they don't dwell on here that I almost would have liked for it to have been part of the thing. They've done this a few times on Star Trek, where the O'Brien that we will be watching on the show from here forward is the O'Brien of several hours in the future, which is exactly like the O'Brien of several hours in the past. He just knew a little bit more. And sort of a question of like, is he the real Chief O'Brien? Like, I kind of like those kind of weird questions. It happened. Who was it on Voyager?
Harry Kim.
Harry Kim was like from that episode onward was really alternate universe Harry Kim. He just behaved more or less precisely the same way. But yeah, this might have been the episode where Chief O'Brien, as we know him, died, only to be replaced by a 5 hours later doppelganger.
Well, O'Brien and Harry Kim both die a few times over the course of Star Trek. But what I liked about one of the deaths is when he jumps to the future and sees his corpse laying on that slab in the infirmary.
Yep.
And he gets mad at Bashir for like, how did you let me die? You're my doctor. And then Bashir is like, like I tried, did everything I could, and your body just like gave up. And like O'Brien's like, he's like, no, it's not my fault. Like, don't say my body gave up. This is your fault. I love that reaction. Like that he's like angry about it. That cracks me up.
Yeah. Kind of a realistic gut reaction that you might have.
Yeah, and he's not like angry, but it's kind of like
exasperated.
Yeah, it's just, and it's still like in that friendly rapport that they have. But he's just like Jesus, Julian, like how do you do this? Like you should be better than this.
Yeah, this episode serves another sort of purpose, which is it's getting us all thinking just on a subconscious level about the Klingons and the Romulans again, and what roles they might play in galactopolitics.
And it's a reminder of, the Dominion's not even in this episode. They're not even doing anything that we know of. Yes. It's just like the existence of the Dominion as a potential threat is enough to throw everything into chaos.
Right. And yeah, that is a neat kind of continuity. It lets the Dominion as a concept breathe. Yeah. They can go from being like in episode 1 of the season an immediate threat, we better get ready for war, to more of a it could go bad. We don't know when. Maybe it won't, but it's just hanging over us, just looming. And honestly, that feels more realistic. That's kind of how things play out sometimes. All right, Fatheree, any other thoughts from you, or shall we move on to Bashir's birthday?
Yeah, let's take a telepathic trip into Dr. Bashir's psyche and
Mm-hmm.
talk about Season 3, Episode 18, Distant Voices. After an alien assault leaves Bashir unconscious, he is trapped inside his mind. This is the one I don't like.
Oh, interesting, because I ended up liking this episode, and I also don't normally like episodes that are mindscapes,
Yeah.
where a
They tell
person's.
you early. They tell you pretty early that this isn't real. So
Yeah,
that
it
probably
takes a
helped
little
you.
bit, but like as soon as I sort of met the rest of the cast when he bumped into him, uh, I kind of knew that they were acting out of character, and what is it? He has an argument with a, what do they call, a Lethian, and then
Yeah.
suddenly
Well,
he like blacks out at some point, and he's on like a darkened version of the station. It's all in disarray. It's falling apart. The Lethian is rampaging through it, killing people, and ultimately he will come to figure out that when he runs into various crew members, that they are aspects of his psyche. And I think that if like I ended up liking this because here's the thing: there's an actual mystery as to precisely what's going on. I feel there's like reveals early on and throughout, like, oh, he does figure it out early on. And it has some emotional reveals in the final act when the Lethian confronts him about like his failures in life. So I feel like there's like kind of constant, interesting little things happening and reveals. And if I'm going to have a Mindscape type story, I kind of like, like it's got enough going for it to make it work for me. There's also kind of like an old TOS plot. There's a timer running, which is to say he's getting older and older. It's that is that the symbolic representation of his body sort of shutting down or whatever?
yeah, and I actually thought that like when he gets something like the old age makeup and he has like the white hair, he
Yeah.
does look a bit more like his uncle, Malcolm McDowell. Yeah, I see like a little bit more of the
Uh,
resemblance.
yeah, I actually thought he did like some exceptionally good physical work there, as far as like the old age stuff. Like his old age acting was better than the old age makeup, which was still pretty solid.
Yeah, but
Pretty
no, he
pretty good
sold it.
pretty good TV stuff. The sort of the shake and everything, and the straining to move around.
But I guess we should list off like the actual avatars that he experiences. O'Brien represents pessimism, and I like that. I like that moment where he's like, you represent all of my doubt, and he's like, no, I don't, or whatever he says. Kira is like aggression. Sisko is professionalism and skill. When we see Sisko treating those people, Odo is the
Hmm.
paranoia. Uh, Garrick is, I guess, curiosity, but then he becomes the villain. Um,
Right.
and Dax is like confidence and adventurousness. The Bashir who is like, oh yeah, I'm ready to be here out on the frontier, practicing frontier medicine back in the first episode. That was
Hmm.
like his Dax. But yeah, the reveal, the biggest one is that the truth of the pre-ganglionic fiber that he mistook for a post-ganglionic nerve. He made
I
that
think I
mistake
read
on
that
purpose.
behind the scenes that like someone, like who worked on the show, like there had a doctor or something for spouse maybe, and said that would never be, no one would ever make that mistake, and so they
Yeah,
retooled it into a, he did it deliberately.
yeah.
They managed to, I think, both satisfy reality and use it to move his story forward, which is to say, he what did he not want to be valedictorian because of the weight that carried? I forget exactly
That's
what
what
they
they
said.
say, and we learn more about his past in the future, and we actually see his parents, and there's other stuff we can probably like piece together from that whenever you see that episode in the future. But it's just I have a hard time and I'm not a Bashir hater, but I have a hard time feeling sorry for this guy who's like, oh, poor little Julian. He was this smartest one in his class, but he didn't want to be, so he got a question wrong on purpose. And oh no, he could have been a professional tennis player, but like his parents were like, "That's not good enough. You need to go be a doctor." He's like, "Okay, I'm a doctor." And I'm like, "Man, I don't." And you're turning 30, and you're sad about turning 30. It's like, I don't care about like any of this stuff. Like it just doesn't, like I don't buy any of the emotional weight of any of it.
Oh, that's interesting. See, I think because maybe because Bashir has been, he is a kind of privileged guy, honestly, and these are arguably privileged problems. Like the problem is he hasn't wooed Dax because he values her friendship over, presumably chasing her around like a creepy incel man. Um, but yeah, they. I think it's maybe it's the actor as much too. Is like I feel like when he gives a more serious performance, when we see him, he's struggling this whole episode. This the Lethian is on the march after him. And Lethian, we only really get to hear talk at the end, and I thought that they gave him a good creepy voice so that even in his short time, he's got some presence. But to me, I think they still sold it as, even if it is arguably kind of like preppy problems.
And it doesn't really mean anything at the end. They're just like, oh, well, most people get the psychic attack from a Lethian and they die, but you were really lucky and lived. And it's like, it sounds like you didn't really like do anything, or there's no like accomplishment or anything that comes along with that.
But I enjoyed the ride on this one, and I liked seeing him kind of get the better of it, and in a somewhat grisly way. What do they say? Begin sterilization or something?
Oh yeah, when he takes command of the infirmary, and
and it's like
I like
as if it were like a germ or something.
Yeah, but I like that like he's kind of like like he's like the god of that domain. Like here, if I can like reframe this to be like a medical procedure, that's when I'm in control, and that's when I can't be defeated.
So yeah, that's interesting. I would not have guessed that this was the one Fatheree, but that makes sense, and I can see your criticisms. But I think because it played out also like a kind of neat Hitchcockian suspense thriller that, and I want to say there's, one of those Hitchcock movies that at least has some idea about this same kind of thing, multiple characters representing different people or something like that, or different personality facets, that's probably what it's reminding me of, those kind of suspense movies. So yeah, I enjoyed the ride. So let's go through the Looking Glass.
Yes, the next episode is Through the Looking Glass, that we don't really need to spend much time on. We've talked about this before. If you check the playlist this is on YouTube, or if you're listening to this elsewhere, I'll have like a link to it. But we talk about all the Deep Space Nine Mirror Universe episodes, and one show that we did way back when. Dave, you might have had like some different context for it watching it this time, so I don't know if you want to quickly say what your take is on it now.
Sure.
After seeing all this other stuff you've seen. The synopsis is, in the Mirror Universe, Sisko persuades the alternate version of his dead wife to join the Terran rebels, or he will watch her die a second time. Sisko is recruited by Mirror Universe O'Brien to go to the Mirror Universe to stop Jennifer Sisko, who's alive over there, from foiling their plans.
The tech that Jennifer's developing is going to allow her to like spy out the rebel base. What I thought was interesting in this one as a Mirror Universe story is that although there is a plot point, the rebels are trying to stop her. For Sisko, it's a personal stake, and usually when you're in the Mirror Universe, you're trying to either escape it or stop some atrocity from happening, and the atrocity, I guess, is kind of part of the plot. But Sisko is clearly also, it's an opportunity for him to reunite in a way with his wife. And I thought it was interesting to have a Mirror Universe story that's like so kind of like keyed into personal stakes. I don't feel there's a strong rapport between Avery Brooks and the actress who plays Jennifer. So unfortunately, those scenes, like at the end, I thought weren't quite the potent ending I might have liked. But there was also a badass bunch of action sequences with some cool Kirk-style bluffing and like some John Woo action with disruptors on the part of Sisko. So overall, it's a very watchable and good Mirror episode. I just again, since it was kind of predicated on him getting back together with his wife, I was a little disappointed that was not like the emotional, like it should be like this really intense scene, and instead she's just like, oh, maybe you're not the bastard of the mirror universe guy I know. You might be okay.
Well, let's beam back to the Prime Universe, as it's canonically called now, thanks to Discovery, and talk about the two-parter, Improbable Cause and The Die is Cast. I would say the highlight of Season 3, of all Season 3.
I agree. This is one good scene and one cool moment after the next, and a place I did not expect them to go. But do you want to go ahead and say the plot before we dive in?
The first episode, Improbable Cause, Odo begins an investigation after a bomb destroys Garrick's tailor shop. This basically puts Garrick and Odo in a situation where they track down a Nobran Tain and the Obsidian Order, and there's like this joint Tal Shiar, Romulan, and Obsidian Order Cardassian fleet that's going to go try to blow up all of the Founders. Then the second episode, The Die is Cast synopsis, the Cardassian Romulan fleet enters the Gamma Quadrant. Sisko goes against Starfleet orders to rescue Odo, and we see their big armada attack the Founder homeworld, and it doesn't work out for them. It was all a trick by the Founders, and the Jem'Hadar come and blow up all of their ships, and Odo and Garrick escape back to the Defiant and make it back to Deep Space Nine. But they've been through some shit. What do you think of this one, Dave?
Just fantastic twists and turns, and the best character work to date, at least since the episode where he had his withdrawal. What do they call that one? Implant or that thing?
The Wire.
The Wire. I did not know. I knew that he was Garrick is gay coded. That they never like outright said it. I did not know they walked right up to the precipice in like such an obvious way, as you will see in this episode. To showing that Nobran Tain was his ex as well as his former employer.
That's what you think, that Nobran Tain was like his ex-lover?
I feel like it's inescapable from the looks they give to their rapport with each other, and to when the intimate hands locking at the end at the end of the second episode or the first episode when he decides to join. That it's felt just very clear to me. He's like his intense loyalty to him was something that could only come from being like a lover. Is that not the standard reading on it? Because I'd be shocked if it wasn't.
What if they say that they're like family members, like they're related to each other?
Oh, well, that would throw things off. That's fair. I guess what happened is that, their closeness sure read as lovers to me. If I find out they're brothers, that does change things, or something, or father son. So okay, that's interesting. I suppose in a way it doesn't really affect the intensity of the episode. Obviously, there's an emotional connection that comes through on the screen, whether it's you read it that way or not. Because like the ship is about to go down at the end, and Garrick is like, I have to go back for him. If it's going back for family, or if it's going back for a lover, there's still essentially love involved. So I'm a little saddened because I liked it better the other way, but that's okay. I want to say that Garrick gets just tons of great lines throughout this. I love the early scene where he's talking to Bashir, and Bashir tells him about the story of the boy who cried wolf. And he says the lesson from that is that you should never tell the same lie twice.
Well, the episode opens with them talking about Shakespeare and Julius Caesar, and so it probably starts off on the right foot for you as like the big Shakespeare fan.
Correct, even though Garrick is like, I don't like this, and like Shakespeare was writing about a weak leader in Julius Caesar because he didn't know they were plotting against him, and Bashir is like, well, that's the whole point of the tragedy. That's what's so insane about it. And then, of course, he, at the very end and during an intense moment, he quotes it to Nobran Tain. But yes, it is a good foot to get off on with me with some Shakespeare stuff.
The fault is not with the stars, but with ourselves, or something like that. Basically,
Yeah,
saying
yeah.
like it's like this didn't go to hell because it was fate or
Fate.
predetermined. It did
Hmm.
because like we were real shitty about it.
Yep. Um, and let's see. Oh, let me ask you this, Father. Speaking of Odo stuff, did we his contact on Cardassia? Is this
Yeah,
the
his
first
spy
time we'd seen
network.
that contact?
Yes.
And part of another part of that sort of web of contacts that they seem to be building up. Um, that was pretty cool. Okay, well that's pretty handy. Just the premise alone, by the way, of this, what I thought was pretty audacious. It went from an episode that seemed like um, could have been a bottle episode that was a mystery about who blew up Garrick's shop, and then suddenly by the end of it, the Obsidian Order and the Tal Shiar are working together to first strike the Dominion before they can come into the Alpha Quadrant. That's a fucking cool premise.
Yeah, and it's a big deal, and you have they have like all those cloaked ships. It explains what was going on in that nebula with the Obsidian Order ships.
Yep.
We have cool like Odo, working the case, trying to solve the mystery, doing the detective stuff. We have cool like espionage stuff with Garrick.
And there's
There's
the buddy kind of thing going on where you got Odo, who's kind of Garrett. He's sort of unflappable. You can't run rings around him with kind of clever wordplay the way you can the way that Garrett can with Bashir. And in fact, he very clearly like calls that out later on. I jotted it down. He's like, "I'm not Dr. Bashir, and we are not sparring amiably over lunch." So that's fun to see because Garrick is like, if I were on the station, I'd find him frustrating at times. Like
yeah.
if I didn't know him kind of the way Bashir does, and hadn't seen him like kind of stick out his neck for the right cause often enough, I'd be like, oh god.
And
Father, when you were
Odo
watching,
tries to play along with it for a little bit because
he
like
does.
like Garrick is like really trolling them in the infirmary when he's like, I don't know who would do this to me. It might have been like that Nausicaan I messed up his wedding suit, or that Uridian I owe money to, and Odo gets kind of impatient there, but then like later when after Garrick was like, I guess it was Major Kira, like later like Odo is like, I have bad news. Major Kira has an airtight alibi, so he tries to like play along. There's a while where
Yeah,
Odo tries to play along, but like he finally gets so fed up, and I love when he tells Anobra and Tane and Garrick that like the two of you spend so much time trying to say something else when you really mean this, but you say that, and you end up saying nothing at all.
yeah. It's a good assessment from someone who is plain spoken and from someone who's just like tired of the kind of the mind games, which Garrick does. Like I love the character, but like again, if I were to know him actually, I think I'd find it incredibly frustrating. Father, I was curious when you were watching this as a kid in the '90s. Where did you stand on Garrick?
I liked him. I thought he was funny. I thought it was cool how like he'd be the guy who would like shoot the Obsidian Order operative in Second Skin, stuff like that. He's like eh, traditionally a lot of fan favorite characters. They're kind of like that dude who he might be a good guy this week and a bad guy next week, and he can kind of
Right.
go back and forth. Those, for whatever reason, as audiences, we really seem to find those guys likable.
Yeah, the Lex Luthor on Smallville sort of style.
Yeah, they'd probably be like terrible people to deal with in real life or to try to be friends with, like Dr.
Right.
Bashir does.
In the Dia's cast, when they launched the Defiant, it felt almost more like a first launch than its actual first launch, and was really cool.
Oh,
Just
we have that betrayal from Eddington too, who follows the orders of that Admiral
right,
Todman.
right. Eddington, who will go on to become a more important character. Well, he'll show up more throughout the season, and they will use his potential betrayerness, his traitorousness, to good effect in the final episode.
Yeah, they
Um,
want us to think that maybe he is a changeling infiltrator, but we will find out if he is or not later in the season. Um, I like the Flaxian merchant who was supposed to be the hitman to kill Garrick. And he's a really weird. I don't know if I love or hate his design. Like the prosthetics are so weird looking. But just like
Yeah,
that scene with like Odo in him, like in the interrogation room, and when he's like teasing about like mixing the perfumes together to
right. He
would
knows
create
that
the
one of them will
poison.
create an explosive mixture.
Yeah, it just shows like Odo like really being on top of stuff, and it was like an interesting this weird flamboyant character that like, oh yeah, I can totally believe that guy is like this weird merchant, but I can also be like, oh no, he's actually like this hitman that's out to murder
Yeah,
people, and it's just
he
this
he more or
disguise.
less, until Odo is like literally about to potentially blow them up, he doesn't break character. He's pretty good at his job up until right up until he breaks.
And
But speaking of breaking, Odo, his torture, sort of his devolution,
oh yeah,
is pretty terrible. And Garrick, when he's like getting really upset about it, is also a rare case where we kind of see him not bandying words about, not trying to talk in riddles. He's just like, confess, even if you lie, just tell me, give me something. He's clearly does not want to do this. If I were Odo, I don't know if I'd be quite so quick to kind of forgive him as he is at the end,
and that
even
did
given.
bother me. The first time I saw this, that last scene where he's like, maybe we should have breakfast together, like that bothered me. Now I'm a little bit more okay with it because they make a big deal of Odo saying like, I actually understand what it feels like to want to go home and want to be back with your people. And I
Yeah,
think that's the only reason why Odo would even consider forgiving him
they
is
connected
because
on
of
sort
that.
of a level that's a little harder to understand, maybe.
Yeah, it
But
was
they
like
are both supreme sort of exiles in a way, and
from the
so
villains, that like oh yeah, like you were an Obsidian Order Cardassian. I'm
yeah,
the one of the founders of the Dominion. Like our people are like the enemies of all of our friends of the entire show that we're on.
right,
Yet we both miss them and wish we could go back to them.
yeah. So it does make some sense, but yeah, it's like, man, this is the guy who he did not literally like torture him like physically, like he wasn't cutting at pieces of him, but he instigated the thing that was essentially torture. So
He knew Odo had a secret, because Odo
right,
hadn't told anyone that like he actually does really want to go back to them. We all saw him make that choice at the beginning of the season when he chooses not to rejoin them. But here's the first time where he says like, "No, I actually like really, really, really want that and wish I could do that." And
right, like
Garrick
he's
never tells that to anyone. Like he doesn't tell it to Anobrin Tain and the Romulan who's not really a Romulan. He
right.
doesn't tell that in his report at the end.
Yeah, no, he can keep the secrets when it's important.
Hmm.
At first, I was starting to make a note while I was watching that I was like, oh, I kind of like this Romulan seems pretty canny. He
Yeah,
caught on that Garrick is protecting Odo, and
Colonel
it's like,
Lovok.
and then he turns out to be a founder.
And if
So
if you rewatch this, you actually can see that he is looking out for Odo early on when he tells Tane like we we should bring Odo back with us to Romulus. And like he's trying to protect Odo in his own way.
yeah, it's
It's a big thing with the founders. They're very like they hate all the solids, but they love each other, and that the whole thing about no changeling has ever harmed another. Um this reinforces that, and that makes the thing that happens at the end of the season even more of a big deal.
right on. In this one, we get to see the big action is the Defiant coming into the rescue. Um,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it got to kick more ass than it's ever kicked in any previous appearance. It like shreds 3 ships at least. Looking really cool doing it, and
That cool
gets
move where it waits till like they're super close, like 50 meters before they fire.
yeah.
It was dangerous. It's like we might get a little singed if we do that.
Yeah, no, it looked cool. When they fire it, it looks supremely impactful. It's always like a volley that goes really fast and intense, and it always it's like the equivalent of in boxing of a bunch of hits in a row, just like bam, 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 bam on somebody, and then they just like it almost always if they can hit, they can blow up a ship. So that's just like how it visually reads. So that was very cool to see. Um, And but man, yeah, I guess the actual overall effects to the battle were that the fleets, at least maybe not the full fleets for the Romulans and the Cardassians, but the fleets
Well, the Obsidian Order and Tal Shiar.
for their intelligence agencies got decimated.
To the point where they no longer really consider the Cardassians or Romulans a threat. The Colonel Lovok changeling tells Odo and Garrick, he says, after today, the only threats to us in the Alpha Quadrant are going to be the Federation and the Klingons. And then he says very ominously, but they're not going to be threats for much longer. So that's something that we kind of get into more in the rest of the season, and then especially in season 4, what the Dominion has planned for the Federation and the Klingons.
I felt like this was part of the reason this was such a satisfying two-parter is, again, it started out seeming like it was a small episode about a mystery on the station. By the end, the two major, there's been a huge battle. The stakes have completely changed. The changelings and the founders have revealed themselves to be very clever and even, in some ways even more dangerous than we thought. And the whole chessboard has changed. And there's this, on a character front, there's an interesting connection now between Garrick and Odo. Which, by the way, I really like that last conversation where you see Garrick looking at this kind of tarnished mirror, and Odo is just kind of a reflection in it while they're talking. And I thought that was a cool sort of had that suggested the murky distance between them and the kind of noirish kind of blurring of lines.
And also he's ashamed, look at Odo directly.
Yeah.
We rarely see Garrick vulnerable like that. He's normally so on top of his shit.
Yep.
And that final line from Garrick where he says, what the sad thing is, I'm actually a really good tailor. He could just live a life as plain simple Garrick. But no, he wanted to go back to be the spy, to be part of the Obsidian Order so bad that he was willing to reunite with the man who tried to have him killed. I think the only other thing I have on this one is I just love the rivalry between Dukat and Garrick, and it feels like anytime one of them has the opportunity to go after the other one, they never miss an opportunity. And when Garrick is in the good graces of Anobran Tain again, and he's like, okay, you'll join me again, and we'll run the Obsidian Order together. And he tells him oh yeah, remember that gold Dukat? I need him taken care of. Garrick's never gonna forget that. For whatever reason, they hate each other.
Yeah. No, he was clearly ready for some at least on some level ready to jump back into a bit of a vengeful mode. I was not sure how much Garrick was just. I thought initially he's playing along, he's running a long con on Anobran Tain, but it seems like it was all pretty sincere, right?
Mm-hmm.
Was there any con game that he was pulling in there other than that he didn't want to kill Odo?
Yeah, he didn't want to kill Odo, and we see him being a little conflicted with Mila, the old the servant lady to Anobran Tain, where he's really worried about her. And
was he generally okay with the plan of just bombarding the founders into oblivion?
Oh yeah, he actually thought that was a good idea from the beginning. That Starfleet Admiral Todman was I mean, if it works, it's not the worst case scenario.
Oh yeah, no, that's right.
And it was a smart move, I guess, because if you do kill the founders, they said the Jem'Hadar will die because they're dependent on the drug Ketracel White to live. So you would destroy the entire leadership and you would destroy the entire military in one strike if it had worked.
Yep, it was a good plan. If it had not been coerced by the very people that you were there trying to strike against. All right, so let's go to a personal episode.
Yes, this was actually one of my favorites as a kid, and this is another one I have very strong memories of watching for the first time. But Season 3, Episode 22, Explorers. Sisko builds a replica of an 800-year-old Bajoran spaceship, and tries to use it to prove that the Bajoran explorers could have made it to Cardassia without developing warp drive. Yeah, so this is the father-son adventure episode. It's a very wholesome episode. Also, in the opening scene, it introduces the character Lita, who becomes a bigger recurring character, and was when we did Tex-Trek #1 back 5 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
That's the one that you asked. Who was my what Star Trek character did I have like the biggest crush
Yep.
on growing up watching Star Trek, and it was actually Lita Chase Masterson,
Dabo
actress who plays
girl,
her.
Dabo girl Lita, right?
Yeah, and in this first scene, she's kind of comes off as like this like real dumb bimbo kind of like, oh doctor, like you need to check out my cough. But like
Yeah.
they flesh her out and make her a deeper character later. So try not to judge her too harshly based on this introduction.
This episode is kind of, in some ways, what would be two B plots in other episodes just put together, and then because it also has the other one about like Bashir reconnecting with his old academic rival,
Elizabeth Lins, the actual first in the class.
Yeah. So I've seen Picard stuck on a shuttle with Wesley and stuff like that, and I wasn't quite sure about it. I should have just kind of trusted in the writers, because the actual conversation between Jake and his dad are. Oh, by the way, he busts out the beard in this one too, right?
Yeah, this is the introduction of bearded Sisko, and he will remain bearded for the rest of the show.
Yeah, he achieved Rikerdom. But the writing was just so good on it. I felt it was some of the most natural character writing on the show. The kind of bonding that they do over doing sort of something like physical and taxing, like actually, the Solar Sailor actually has all this kind of neat detail where it, runs much like a real ship, and they did all this detail work on the interior and the exterior shots. Usually Solar Sailors, when they show up in movies and TV, you kind of get the idea real quick. They're sailing on solar waves, blah, blah, blah. But here they kind of showed you the work of it, like running like a true sailing ship. And so, yeah, they bond over it, and they have all these interesting conversations along the way, because they've kind of got nothing but time here and there when they're not working.
Yeah, and we get more of like Jake, wanting to be a writer, and it builds on what they set up before.
So it strikes me that Jake has actually, over the course of time, kind of hidden a number of things from his dad. He hid that he was writing poetry, that he was apparently a hustler at this, was it a card game?
Yeah, Domjot. It's like playing pool.
Oh, right.
That's what those Nausicaans played when they stabbed young Picard in the chest.
Oh, nice. He hid from his dad that he didn't want to go to Starfleet, and he also hid from his dad that he didn't, that he had applied for a writing fellowship and gotten it, which he tells him in this one. So although, like, at this point, Sisko is beginning to come around to it, and he's moving forward, and he is almost always very good about things. But it is interesting that Jake had to kind of sidestep him a lot. I think in some ways it's kind of normal teen stuff, that you kind of have to start figuring things out for yourself. And also there's a lot of indecision involved in not knowing if you're, whatever you're doing, which might define your whole adult life and career and all that, if it's a good idea or not. I liked when he's talking about putting off the fellowship for a year, and Sisko is like, what would be different in a year? And he's like, I don't know, but maybe something would, though. And it's clear that it's because sometimes you don't want to make a decision,
I thought it was clear that they had Cirroc Lofton signed for one more season, but they weren't sure after season 4.
Is that right?
No, I'm kidding. I don't know.
I was going to say, it works though for the character thing. It works for him trying to spend more time with his girlfriend, who he only sees once in a blue moon. Spend more time with his dad. That was the big thing in this, is that he kind of reveals that he's worried about his dad, that him being alone, and Sisko's almost immediately like, hey, you shouldn't worry about that. But, it's super sweet that he did. and
they probably have like this bond, from like losing Jennifer. So
yeah.
like they've probably and having to like be a military family and like move from like base to base and stuff, and like they're probably like the only thing that's like consistent in each other's lives. And so I think that is really sweet that he would like be worried about like, yeah, what if I'm gone? Like my dad won't have anyone. Like maybe I can get him this girlfriend, this freighter captain Cassidy Yates, who we will see more of going forward. They just kind of introduce her here. We don't see her.
Yeah, Jake trying to give his dad romantic advice was pretty funny. I like seeing Sisko's surprise, where he does moments where he's like, "What?" It's always a good time. Always a good time for me.
And Jake pulling his leg about like maybe he's like a Maquis member when he's like, I can't talk about it. And then he's like, just kidding.
Yeah. That was one of my favorite bits in it because of the kind of rapport that they had and the way it kind of drifted away from how sometimes I feel like, Trek's writing on interpersonal stuff like that can feel a little dry or just a little lacking in nuance. Like people don't joke around quite the way that feels more human. They feel a little stiff sometimes. And I felt like they don't feel stiff. The kind of, even the sort of physicality that I think Avery Brooks kind of brings to it where, he hugs a lot. He'll kiss his son. He gets in kind of close for intimate things. And I think that's his theater background as part of that. But their bond seems really real in it. So I ended up loving all the scenes on the flyer.
You want to know why Jake Sisko works better than Wesley Crusher and is a better character than Wesley Crusher?
What's that?
It's a big part of it is that they don't try to force Jake into every episode, into every story. Like, we need to give him like an important thing to do. Like, he's not in a lot of episodes. And like whenever they do show Jake, they're able to make it a little bit more meaningful. And I think he is a much more compelling character than Wesley Crusher, who I like Wesley, I like Will Wheaton, but I prefer watching Jake. And Jake's the one that resonated with me a lot more, growing up.
100%. And honestly, few people can quite identify with a prodigy kid. That's just going to be, by definition, it's a small percentage of people. But almost anybody can identify with somebody who's kind of like likes their parent, but sometimes gets in arguments with them, who might have like a kind of dodgy friend that the parent doesn't approve of, but whose maybe intentions are sometimes better than the parent thinks at times. And, like this one where he's like teaching Nog to read, and now Nog is like freaking applying to Starfleet. So yeah, it just felt more real. There is a relatableness to it, and also I think honestly, they let them. I think the writing is just better. They just had better writing. So when he bonds with his dad, it's better than in general than when Wes was bonding with his mom.
And we get the cool reveal that like, oh yeah, ancient Bajorans actually did go to Cardassia before Cardassians went to Bajor. Even the Gul Dukat tried to like talk them out of like, oh, like this might be dangerous. Yeah. This might be dangerous, Benjamin. Maybe you shouldn't do this. But then at the end, he's got to be like, oh yeah, actually, like we knew about this. We just discovered. Wink.
Yeah, he's like, what fortuitous timing. The Cardassians are pieces of shit. By the way, early on, I was like, is this supposed to be analogous, their journey and the voyage, to almost like the idea that like the Egyptians had, spaceships and stuff like that, like kind of far-fetched, fringy theory, stuff like that. But it feels more like they were this was like, Leif Erikson visited the New World, and Aboriginal cultures can have amazing technology, and that we sometimes downplay or try and find sci-fi explanations for, because we're just like, oh, how could such primitive people do this? But in fact, people have always been like really, really intelligent and just like wildly innovative. So yes, of course, the ancient Bajorans would have been, and I really liked that. It's funny because the at the end, the Cardassians like fire off some like space fireworks for them.
Yeah.
And like it's kind of cheesy because like I don't know if they would have gone that far.
Well, they have that peace treaty. They need like the good PR.
Right. I was trying to decide on their end, but like I still like almost had like my heart in my throat watching, because I was so happy for Jake and his dad, and I was like, they deserved it, and they whatever the reasoning, they had their moment. Great episode. B plot was just okay. I did like seeing Bashir and O'Brien drunk.
Oh yeah, you know what bothers me in that though is the song they're singing, Jerusalem,
Yeah.
It's like the super like the British Empire is the greatest thing in all of God's kingdom, and we should all. It's like
Oh.
it's really weird to have like a Irishman and a Sudanese guy like singing that, but it was
Yeah.
Colm Meaney's choice. I learned this bothered me for a long time, but then I learned like they were actually going to use like some other song and they couldn't get the rights to it or something, and then
Oh.
Colm Meaney was like, "Well, the Brits conquered both of our countries. We'd probably both know Jerusalem," so he
Oh, wow.
suggested that.
Interesting. That's interesting. I think my favorite part was that was when O'Brien tells him is trying to be nice in the kind of crusty way only he can and explain he doesn't hate him anymore.
Well, no, he's trying to say like people either love you or hate you, and I don't hate you anymore. He didn't want to say like, and I love you, but he
Yeah,
said like, and I don't hate
he's like,
you.
I definitely don't hate you anymore. Yeah, I was cracking up over that. That was the best part about it.
Yeah, the last thing that I have to add is Sisko is a builder. He's
Hmm.
like, it's ironic this episode's called Explorers, but he's not the explorer that Kirk and Picard were. Like he
Yeah,
doesn't
that's true.
like go from place to place. Cisco likes to like build. You know, he talks about like
Yeah.
or Dax talks about like, oh, like I remember when you were building that nursery when you and Jennifer decided to have a baby. And
Oh,
like here
yeah.
like we see him like building the solar sailor thing, and he like his presence on Deep Space Nine is he's like, you know, building an established station there
Right, and
over these
arguably, in a
seven
broader sense,
seasons.
he's trying to build or rebuild Bajor.
And him over the course of the show he gets more and more interested in like the Bajoran culture, and more like starts to become like a kind of a part of Bajor.
I thought that was a really cool thing. I like this better, I guess, than the one with him in A Prophecy, where he's starting to feel a connection to these guys
Yeah.
for sure.
All right, well, let's ride some tachyons away from Bajor and over to Ferenginar and talk about Season 3, Episode 23, Family Business. Quark's mother violates Ferengi law by earning profit. So we get to meet Mugi. Ishka is introduced in this episode.
Um, I never thought I'd see a scene on Star Trek where a character is encouraging his mother to take her clothes off. But
Yeah, that bothers me. That's very uncomfortable to watch.
it is uncomfortable. I did laugh when it happens, and because she's like better, and he's like much. It's just so ridiculous at that point. But boy, did they lean into the Ferengi life. Is this the most that we have seen of like Ferenginar? Is this the
We've
first time
never
we've
been to
been?
Ferenginar before. This is the first time they
Okay.
ever go there.
I was wondering why they made it raining throughout this,
It's
other than
always
maybe
it always rains. They have in the Ferengi language, they have like 47,000 different words for raining.
had that come up before, or does that come up in the future?
I don't remember when they mentioned that for the first time.
Uh, so this is another Ferengi episode that's a little bit until the final act. I'm not particularly on board. It's too goofy. There's too much treated as tongue in cheek, like just look at how backwards they are. Look what's normal to them. When in fact, it's like if treated seriously, this is like almost like a Handmaid's Tale or something like that. Until it gets to the reconciliation phase, until Rom yells at both of them and kind of shows his merit, and until Quark reins his stuff in, I had a bit of a tough time with it.
Boy, does Rom really get a lot of growth in season 3.
For sure. Yeah, he's like almost regularly kind of at least standing up for his kid and standing up for family, I guess, in a broader sense, for the mother or for his son. It seems like his own self-esteem is like bottomed out, but maybe on the rise as he finds out that he can stand up to Quark.
But we get multiple recurring characters introduced in this episode. We get Ishka, who we'll see more of.
Okay.
We get Brunt, Liquidator Brunt of the FCA.
Oh, good. I wouldn't mind seeing him again.
And that's Jeffrey Combs. That's one of the big Jeffrey Combs characters.
Okay.
So yeah, well, he's a good recurring foil for Quark.
And I assume Cassidy Yates will recur. Actually,
yes.
I think I've seen her in at least one subsequent episode. The the freighter pilot that was Jake was setting up his dad with. Another nice bit of continuity. What I found is that mentally she was almost too close to Jennifer. The voices weren't quite the same, and not the appearance not that close, but close enough that I found her immediately boring. She was okay.
But they have that cool bonding moment over baseball.
I did like that.
There's that wonderful turn on their date when she's talking about her brother hurt himself doing something called sliding into second. And then you see Sisko kind of do a double take. He's like...
Kind of lights up.
Sliding into second? Like, you know what baseball is? And they both nerd out over baseball. And Cestus 3, where she's from... that's the planet in Arena that was like contested against the Gorn in the original series.
Oh, neat.
They established there's a Pike City, so there's a city named after Christopher Pike, star of Star Trek: Strange New Worlds, coming up soon. So
that's very cool.
That's cool.
I did like some of the world building on Ferenginar, like the constant bribery everywhere. You can't do anything without paying, like a strip or two of latinum for it.
Yeah, you can't sit in a chair. You can't use an elevator.
We had seen the woman who impersonated a Ferengi, a male Ferengi before, right? And it was just a little. This has continued that same sort of notion of like, hey, I can be just as good an exploiter as the men. And while that certainly makes sense as a story from a Ferengi perspective, I kind of wish that there was a little bit more to the rebellion than just joining them at doing something in their kind of atrocious society. I'm just as good a capitalist as you, so it was a little sad. The best scene I thought was when she kind of told him the truth about his dad, and you were like, what he thought had been all these insults, about his dad having a bad sense for business. They don't go deeper on this. I kind of wish they had, but basically she was saying like, hey, the business isn't everything. He knew family. And and so does Rom, and that's what's great about them. And that's not that is a bigger story there. And I kind of wish that there had been a little bit less time spent on, the wackiness of Ferengi society, and more time spent on subverting it. I suppose. Realistically, it's not like you would expect for major changes to just kind of happen out of nowhere. So.
I like the establishment of their family that Keldar, the father, was like Rom. He was like probably like kind of dumb, but like well-meaning and really cared about family. It was like a very loving father and husband, it sounds like.
Yep.
And then whereas Ishka is a lot more like Quark, and she's like very smart and a bit devious.
Right. To the point where even when she seems to have, given up something, she by no means has at the given up everything.
She's like, I just know to hide it better now, and she's like, I have my money hidden so good, I'll be lucky if I can find it.
Yeah, and I kind of like that it's Rom who gets to be on the inside with that, not Quark.
He would freak out if he was the one who knew about it.
Yep.
Yeah, it's always good to see Rom get one up on Quark, which it's very satisfying when we see it. Do you want to go on to season 3, episode 24?
Yeah. Let's go to Bajor.
Shakar, which I always like to say Shakar in like a pirate voice. I don't know why that was an inside joke between me and a roommate I used to have when we would watch Deep Space Nine. Anytime like they would say like the word Shakar, like one of like we would both just yell like Shakar. Like I don't know how that started.
They don't even say it that way on the show, but
I know it's just
I know how in jokes form.
It's just,
thanks for ruining it. Now I'm gonna hear it.
Well, you're welcome. Kira's old resistance leaders' refusal to return some farming equipment to the Bajoran government nearly starts a civil war. So this one we have Kai Wen is now in charge of the whole planet. The first minister has died. The provisional government has selected Kai Wen to take the office. There's about to be an election, and no one is running against her. And that's kind of a worst-case scenario for Bajor, because she is a despicable, terrible person.
When he actually said that she'd been appointed first minister, I'm like, out loud, I'm watching it, and I just go, fuck.
It's one of those moments.
Kai Wen is a terrible, terrible person. Like, really one of the best and, like, worst, most loathsome villains on Star Trek. she does the kind of thing where she's kind of openly, like, treacly sweet in a way that, like, I think I once upon a time, maybe in the pre-Trump era, would have thought was like, well, people will see through those lies. You can't just, like, say, oh, my child, all the time and just be and be so, like, awful about it. But actually, people do that all the time. Not just Trump. It's, like, lots of skeevy religious leaders, lots of skeevy political leaders. They put on this, like, show that seems so farcical if you see through it. But to their believers, it's just like, oh, no, she's a great person. You know? And so, like, but she's especially despicable for that. The way she, at some point when she saw that Kira's mourning Vedic burial, and she says something like, oh, I would have thought that you would have known this about him. I guess you didn't know him as well as you thought. Oh, man.
That
bitch.
Like, she does it just to be a bitch. Like, she does that, like, knowing it's going to cut deep.
Yep.
It's just like a power move. It's just like look at all this power and dominance I have over you.
Yeah.
It's terrible. It's like I'm watching it and I'm just like, oh my god, I hate this.
When Kira at some point actually just says what I was thinking, the only thing she cares about is her own power. Why can't people see that? And that is the biggest thing, is just I wish people could had a better sense of, like, when people are power mongering, you know? I wish there was a meter over their head for in case it's not obvious. But then Odo says one of the prices of giving people freedom of choice is that sometimes they make the wrong choice. So thanks for that uplifting story, Odo.
and Odo also, like, mentions like that, or reminds us as the audience that Kira, blames Kai Wynn for the death of Burial. So keep that in mind, that the guy that she was in love with is dead, basically at Kai Wynn's hands, or at least from Kira's perspective.
Right. I think it's a reasonable perspective.
Sure.
I was talking about how Deep Space Nine has, like, twists and turns and endings that are particularly satisfying to me sometimes. And so this one, there was an early season episode where, what is it? She's got to, like, kick that crusty old bastard off of his planet.
Off of the moon, yeah.
Yeah, off of the moon. And it's kind of just a so-so episode. I kind of, in my head, was expecting a little bit more something like that, where, we see her say, sorry, it sucks, but for the greater good, which there is a greater good at work here, which is, like, if he gives up the farming equipment, then they can maybe get a badass crop this season, and then they are more attractive as prospective clients for the Federation, blah, blah, blah. That's certainly the case that Kai Wynn has made, even if she's doing it for personal power. But I loved when it does not take too much for Kira to basically join his rebellion.
Yeah,
that was
the
like
guy
the first
that she served with before.
Right.
And I think they've mentioned on the show prior to this, they say she was part of the Shakar resistance cell.
Oh, nice. So that was like his name was even out there.
Yeah.
I liked him, and I liked the other resistance fighters that we see.
Oh, I love Pharrell, and
Pharrell.
I think the woman's name is Lupaza.
He tells a great story about having lost his arm.
Yeah.
When he was trying to liberate them, from a prison camp or something, and that he swore he'd give his life up, and then he said that because he only lost an arm in it, the prophets only took an arm from him. He felt like it would be ungrateful to ever have it, like, replaced, because they still gave him his life. And I was like, oh, God, that's such a good story. It's such a good incidental character that I would see why, Kira, especially over drinks and stuff with these guys, would be like, I am not going to give them up to Kai Wynn.
And I think it's realistic that in, like, this, the Cardassians have pulled out. There's a power vacuum, so they have, like, this very unstable provisional government. And, like, there is a fear of, like, infighting. Like, hey, we've all been, like, a bunch of, like, terrorist freedom fighters all our lives, so, like, this isn't new for us. Like, we actually got pretty good at it. But I like the standoff. It was a lot of tension, and they talked to that colonel that was also a big part of the resistance. He performed the first off-world raid against the Cardassians, so that gives him some.
They're ultimately being hunted by someone who is both honorable, though we don't quite know that until it's important. And good at what he does. And they're good at what they do, but it's, like, going to be a tough fight. and they're all there's a bit where they're like they kind of don't want to like do it again. They're tired. They're a little older than they used to be, and they don't want another life on the run again, which is very understandable.
I love that they come together. Like the fear of them like being in a shootout with each other is what makes them decide to like come together, and they come up with a way to one up.
It was
Kai
the
Wynn.
best ending of all time. I loved it. They very cruelly tease that it's all going to go wrong when there's like a few stray shots fired during their ceasefire. And I was like, oh, I've seen this happen before. It's going to cut to slow motion. We're going to see hear some sad music, and we're going to like later be like, in war, everyone is a victim or whatever, and there's no right side. But instead it was just a scare. They managed to hold the fragile peace, and they turn on Kai Wynn, and put this, honorable resistance leader up and force her to even endorse him. That was the best part.
Yeah.
She has to throw out a statement of support.
Or else they'll reveal how terrible she was.
It was the first time since like she really started plaguing them that I felt like Kira got to like, get her one up on her. And I know she ain't done yet, but it's not where I expected things to be when the episode started. So it was like an incredibly satisfying ending.
I like Shakar. I actually like him more than Bareil, so I kind of enjoy season 3, like killing Bareil and making room for Shakar to be the new likable dude to keep Kai Wynn in check.
Yeah, no, I think that's reasonable. Bareil is a good character, but a little bit flat.
Yeah, a little boring.
Yeah.
Shakar is a little bit more. He's a little bit more exciting. Like I feel like Shakar could have been like a Star Trek captain.
Yeah, for sure. He kind of has that quality to him.
There's the B story with the dart tournament also. I don't know if you have anything to say on that when O'Brien is in the zone.
I don't have any strong feelings on it. It was kind of fun to watch. I wasn't quite sure when his arm gives out. I'm like, wait, is this a gag or is this real?
That's the fakest looking shoulder injury, which it does like you don't even like use your shoulder to shoot darts. It's like more like the elbow and the wrist. So when he reaches back for the drink from Quark, I hate that. That's so dumb and fake looking. But I like the other stuff. I like that it opens with O'Brien and Sisko, smiling, shooting darts together. Like I like that like Sisko's like that chummy that he'll like go down to the bar and hang out with Chief O'Brien. I like the that it was 40 the next day would have been his 47th straight victory. And I like that smug Vulcan at the end who's like no, the rules clearly state like if you step away from the line. Like who the hell reads the rules of darts, Well, okay, a Vulcan would.
And I kind of like it, and I like that this Vulcan was like, I don't know, maybe a little bit of a shark in his own way, because I feel like the Vulcans need to have some fun like that. Spock did. Spock knew how to like kind of be a little bit of a prick sometimes, and it's kind of fun when the Vulcans have attitude. I like it.
Yeah. If you're familiar with TOS, that scene feels very, very appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's talk about the second to last one we have. Episode 25, Facets. Jadzia Dax performs the Trill Zientara ritual, which allows her to meet previous Dax hosts, while Nog applies to Starfleet. So this episode, there's actually not a lot that happens in it, but I like the stuff that does happen. It's interesting. A lot of Curzon stuff. This is basically the Curzon Dax Odo hybrid episode. But Dave, what do you think about this one?
I liked it. It's a kind of character episode I like. It's I read a little behind the scenes stuff and how they tried different ways of like Dax was it Terry Farrell? Is that the actress?
Yeah.
She was going to at one point portray all the different personalities and they would exist through her. Anyway, after they worked it over a while, they came up with this notion that it would be embodied in the other characters, which is super fun. It's like a little bit of a almost like TOS kind of idea. Like, oh, I don't know if I believe that would happen, but like it's so fun that once it's happened, I'm like, oh, this was clearly the right way to go. they get to do just some fun stuff, characters playing against type, like Quark, the maternal one, talking about suckling a baby at his
That's
breast.
so funny. I love that.
And then you get some serious stuff like Scary Sisko as
The
her
murderous musician,
murderous
Duran.
musician host, and then obviously the core story of her, her issues with Curzon, who's this charismatic but a little bit flim-flammy guy that Sisko has to kind of call out in this. And then the Nog going through his application was really good too.
That opening scene of him in the runabout, and then the computer is like, Cardassian ships closing in, and then you see Jake just like appear in front of the windshield of the runabout.
Yeah, they I guess they I don't know if they had ever quite done it like that, but it was a fun bit. And it was funny because, of course, it inverted the usual thing. Nog is like, hey, I'm trying to do something serious here. And he's like, I don't got time for playing around with you, Jake. I noticed there's...
Nog becomes more mature. He becomes more mature and a little bit more kind of like stuck up by the book guy than Jake. So it is a role reversal.
Mm-hmm. That's kind of a very obvious kind of way to flip it, is to have Jake trying to clown around while he's trying to do something serious. I love when they're at the bar afterwards, and Nog is like Quark is like getting on Nog's case for it, and then he's like, there's no profit in Starfleet, and then Nog kind of throws Jake under the bus, and he's like, Uncle, he wants to be a writer. There's no profit in that.
Okay. Writer Jake, there's a bunch of times in Deep Space Nine where, like, you can tell, like, the writers of the episodes are, like, commentating on being a writer through Jake.
Writers do love to talk about themselves. They especially love to talk about how they're, like, underpaid and unloved.
Yeah.
And like, they're not wrong, but it cracked me up in this case. And I also like that Quark... his one idea where you could make a profit off of writing was to get Jake and Nog to write hollow sweet porn, basically.
Yeah, like, why don't you boys do something, good and profitable, like make porn?
He's like, Pornhub is hiring.
he even offers, like, I'll put up the latinum for your first program. Like, you two run off and make a proposal, and I'll put up the latinum for it. Which I guess, coming from Quark, is probably like a vote of confidence, because he's not the guy who's going to invest in what he thinks is a bad investment.
That's right. He's just like, go with something that's a known profit.
You want to know something really cool about this episode, though? Some little behind-the-scenes thing that not many people are going to talk about? Hmm? But our friend Larry Nemeczek, who has appeared on Tex-Trek, he was actually called on by the writers of this episode at the last minute when they were trying to rewrite the script to tell them what all Dax host lore had been established in earlier episodes.
Oh, yeah.
Larry was watching this, like, keeping notes. Okay, like, in this episode, Jadzia says she's been a mother this many times and a father that many times. And she mentioned, Tobin, and, like, this about him, and then, this other thing about some other host. And so he was able to, like, give all of that stuff to them, and they were able to keep all of the continuity straight. So
that's super
thank
cool.
the prophets for Larry.
Yeah, great job on it. I thought you were going to mention that because, like, later at some point in it they drink Tranya, and I was like, shit, it's this stuff from the Corbomite maneuver. That's a deep cut.
Yeah, Curzon liked Tranya, apparently. What did you think of getting to actually see Curzon?
So it's interesting. Overall I liked him. I thought he was maybe a little cartoonish, and I thought it was an interesting notion that he and Odo sort of fused a little bit. So that I thought that created a kind of a realistic reason why what would kind of be revealed to be personal reasons why he might not want to go back into Dax's or Jadzia's head would be blurred and might have seem believable because Odo seemed to want it too. And then so Jadzia would be like, maybe he's right. And I like the sort of moral ambiguity of that. I think I read that some of the writers maybe weren't quite satisfied with how Curzon was portrayed, that he was supposed to be more of a, raconteur and like kind of a little more sophisticated, not like another round. Um, but it was within the ballpark of sort of what I was expecting of Curzon based on all the stories about him.
Yeah, I
So
feel like we know so much about Curzon before this without ever seeing him.
yeah,
But just the way that he's described by Sisko and by Jadzia, like he feels like a real personality type. Like when Sisko is saying like, yeah, he was actually kind of selfish and very manipulative. But he was so charming that people let him get away with that, and I feel like that's like a real personality type.
yeah,
Um,
totally. It's in some ways. It's a personality type that Star Trek usually only does as supporting characters. They don't tend to like to do it as a central character because, yeah, and a lot of times those people can be like kind of a-holes in real life. But like, yeah, he walked this line, and I loved when Sisko was describing it. I also loved when like Dax is really kind of she's really torn over it all, and like whether she doesn't know if she want to ask him about why he rejected her and then allowed her back into the candidate program for the Trill program. And she says like, what if he tells me something I don't want to hear? And then Sisko like is like sort of struggling for the words to comfort her, and she's just like, I have to go, and then she kind of walks away with no resolution. I like that the episode sort of lingered on the kind of discomfort and the, I don't know, that inability to quite pin down the obvious choice.
hmm.
Sometimes Star Trek will have Guinan or somebody show up and drop some pearls of wisdom, and it's like, oh, that's obviously the right thing to do. And I guess Sisko ultimately does in this one, but I guess the road there was a little bit harder, and that felt a little bit more real to me, so I liked that.
Yeah, and Dax or Jadzia is the one who like talks him into like giving the Curzon memories back to
She
her. And I
says there's a great line that she has where she's talking to him, and she says something along the lines of, I feel like I don't have your respect, and I worry that when we rejoin, I won't respect myself. And I thought that was a really cool idea that's very unique to the Trill, to the symbiont life.
experience.
Yeah,
Yeah. Um the idea though of Curzon, who I guess was like a very effective dude at like the work that he did. He is very much kind of a work hard, play hard type.
yeah,
I think that he was this real effective diplomat, and earned like the respect of the Klingons, and was able to help usher in that era of peace with like the Federation and the Klingons. And but at the same time, he's also like very self-indulgent and wants to like drink and party and stay up late and get laid and have a good time. And that type of personality, I think they're so used to, okay, when I see something, when I want something, I will do what needs to be done. I'll put in the work to make it happen. That it's very hard for them to be told no, like you can't have, or like with Dax, like he really wanted her, and he probably had like some Woody Allen type, like the heart wants what the heart wants type of uh
yeah.
look view on it. And then here when he's like, it's fun to be in this changeling body. This is pretty cool. I'm gonna go be this weird merged with Odo dude and have fun adventures and do fun shit.
Hmm.
It's hard for him to be like, no, you can't do that. You're gonna have to like not get the thing that you want in this situation.
Yeah, that was, Jadzia is a character that, of all of the kind of core characters, she's still the one that I sort of, in some ways, feel the most distanced from, because she's always kind of presented as very capable, whether she's kind of doing science officer stuff or whether she's kind of like gambling with the Ferengi. So I think I needed to see, I always like to see some vulnerability in her, makes her feel sort of more nuanced to me. And I'd like to see her take the stand with Curzon, who really did fuck up in a huge way. He like basically kicked her out of the program, could have completely destroyed her life, kind of
Yeah.
move. So he needed to get his ass kicked for that.
Of course, we
But
get the Rom and Quark stuff too, where he's like when Rom figures out that Quark cheated Nog on the test.
Yeah. Speaking of doing something really terrible, like Quark almost destroyed Nog's career there. So yes, this is another great Rom moment. He's, if I'm not mistaken, he basically says, "If you do that again, I will burn your bar to the ground."
Yeah, when he's yelling at him, when he says like, "There's nothing more important to me than my son's happiness, and if you ever do anything to hurt him again, I'll burn the bar down to the ground."
Yeah, I loved it. I also liked seeing uh, Avery Brooks play like Hannibal Lecter style when he was doing the mad musician guy, and I liked that the musician kind of was working like Lecter with the truth. He was calling out Jadzia's self doubt and basically saying that
Yeah.
she wasn't good enough, that only a handful of the hosts had been worthy, and she wasn't one of them. I was like, oh man, those are some. He's dangerous even just with the words. That was cool, and then dangerous physically too. A little scary to know you got that running around inside you.
Well, you'll be pleased to know that we will get even more Joran in the future.
Nice.
Let's close this thing out with the season 3 finale, The Adversary. A Federation ambassador brings newly promoted Captain Sisko orders to take the Defiant on a patrol of the Zenkethi border, where a destabilizing coup has just taken place. But everything is not as it seems. These synopses lie a lot, don't they? They're like there's a coup. It's like, actually, there wasn't a coup. But no, I'm glad they do. I'm glad the synopses don't try to like spoil
Yeah,
things.
I do kind of notice that in things like, but I sort of appreciate it when they don't spoil the big reveals, like saying something like there are secrets yet to uncover, or everything is not as it seems. That's a reasonable way to do it.
Yeah. This was the changeling loose on the Defiant, about to start a war. This whole episode, I feel like it's 45 minutes of showing what one changeling can do if they just cut loose.
Right?
And then that crazy, hard hitting reveal at the end, just like those few words that Odo utters. What the
Oh yeah.
changeling revealed to him. You're too late. We are everywhere. Those 5 words.
What's creepy is that he could be lying and just be saying it to stir things up or like to increase paranoia, and that would work too.
Yeah, just
But
that lie is going to destabilize the Federation if it was a lie.
yeah, this isn't. In some ways, this feels a little bit like the fulfillment of the possibilities of the old TNG conspiracy episode, which was some neat ideas that they just never followed through on. So yeah, this one to me, as the more it went on, I was like, this is a tribute to John Carpenter's The Thing, even right down to some very specific scenes in it. Some of the most famous scenes in the movie, they addressed. But
Yeah.
it's one of those ones where I think it's well done because the whole episode is not like that, just some elements of it. But starting at the beginning when Sisko gets his captain's pips, and Jake pins them on, that was another case where I was kind of a little emotional watching it. I was like, just to see, that the son got to pin them on his dad and all that was such a cool thing. I don't like when they sing for "He's a Jolly Good Fellow."
That is so lame. I would be disappointed if like all of my friends are like celebrating something I did and y'all started singing that I'm a jolly good fellow. I'd be so disappointed. I'd be like, this is the
That is
lamest fucking shit.
some crappy British weak sauce there.
Yeah, that's
So
that boring part of Starfleet.
it was. I would only accept that from TNG.
Yeah, that's the let's go listen to Data read poetry in 10 forward after shift ends type
Hip hip
of Starfleet.
hurrah!
Yeah, boo on
But
that.
the actual scene, the scene itself was good, and I was super happy to see it. And obviously, it establishes Sisko as among the captains of Trek now, so that people can.
Which was a problem. They said that Ira Stephen Bear said that people didn't seem to treat Sisko with the same respect they treated Kirk and
Yeah.
Picard, because he was just like a commander, and he was like no, like we need to show like this guy is a captain. And I think the reason why he was a commander from the beginning is because there's this idea. I think sometimes like they're scared to confuse audiences that might not understand like there's a captain rank, but there's also a captain position where like you're actually like a captain of a ship, but you could be
Right.
like your rank could be captain and you have like an entirely different job. The TOS movies didn't care about that because Spock and Scotty are both captains, but they're not captains of the ship. You know, they're like the chief engineer and the first officer. But whatever, like they don't want to confuse people like that. So the idea was like, okay, we'll have like commanders command space stations.
But somebody says, hey, people don't join Starfleet to be a commander or to be this or that. They join to be a captain. And it kind of speaks to the mystique that the captain role has taken on over all the different shows, because that is so spotlighted. It is imbued with all this romance from Trek.
Let's get into the main plot. They're going into Zenkethi space. The Zenkethi being a species we've never heard of before, but apparently there is some war between the Zenkethi and the Federation.
Yeah.
They're
I was like, that
scared
sounds like Kazinti to me, and I half wondered if it was like at one point going to be Kazinti.
I wish that it was just Kazinti because there was supposed to be like a bunch of wars with them.
It did feel a little bit weird because I was like, oh, this is the season finale, and yet they're going to like try and like, help maybe quell a coup d'etat for an alien race I've never heard of. Like, it feels a little like, I feel like there must be something more, and there was something more to it, but they slightly tipped their hand by not being able to use a somewhat more known Trek species.
There's also a species that the Federation, I guess, was at war with from the episode Suddenly Human of the Next Generation. So I just like to believe that like those people and like the Cardassians who the Federation was at war with and like the Zenkethi, like that just like all happened at the same time, because I don't want there to be just like, oh yeah, the Federation's been at war with everyone. That's kind of lame.
Yeah.
So I just headcanon like all that stuff happened at the same time. There's
That
just
makes
like,
sense
hey,
to me.
everyone's attacking the Federation. I might as well attack too.
But like once they get out there, the big reveal, of course, is that one of them is a changeling and is looking to. There is nothing going on here. We'll eventually find out there is no coup, but they're going to start a war. This is another move to put the Federation in checkmate, to remove them from the board as a threat to the founders, to the Dominion. And then the rest of the episode is kind of a pure suspense thing as they try to stop him because he's like locked ship's controls, basically, and they've got to find a way to overcome that technological thing or capture him and make him do it before they cross over into Zenkethi space and start a war. I thought it was interesting that Odo mentions in the episode that he's never fired a phaser or a gun, and he's never killed anyone. I was like, oh, for a guy who's kind of Machiavellian and a little fashy at times, that's very Andy Griffith.
Yeah, and it's not only that, but like no changeling has ever harmed another changeling until this episode. It's like the first like changeling on changeling murder in their history.
Yeah, well, when someone is trying to start a war so that they can take over, more easily take over a whole sector of space, they might deserve to die.
No, and I'm totally with Odo 100%. But what makes it even more complicated is that this changeling died because it didn't, flee. It was like, Odo, come with me. Like right. Come back with us, join us. And because it like stuck its neck out for that,
it stings especially hard.
Yeah.
And they made its death gruesome, Yeah,
that warp core radiation will really fuck you up.
I heard it was, by the way, that was a pretty intense special effects sequence that they had to film there. And I believe it. It's pretty intense CG for the time and all that.
You said you wanted to see more of the Defiant way back when we started season 3. You said you wanted to see more of the interior. We get a lot of it here.
Yeah, I like that. The whole season I've enjoyed the use of the Defiant, but yes, getting a sense of like, did they build new sets for this one, Fatheree?
Yeah, this is the first time we see the engineering set, which I don't know if I've ever really thought of that before, because we see more of it going forward. But isn't it? Sure. It's like a cute little engineering room. Like it's small for like because the Defiant is small. It's like a little
it looks
warp
cool.
core. Yeah, no, I love it.
Yeah, and the suspense. Obviously, one of my favorite horror movies of all time is The Thing, and so they play up that don't trust anybody. They have their own sort of rules that they build up to around that, like working in pairs, confined to quarters, any little thing they can do to make it work out for them, and still there's a certain point when several people have been out of sight of other people for a while, and there's like this group of like half a dozen people, and Sisko's like, shit, any one of us could at this point be one of them, could be the changeling. And so they do, the blood test stuff, and the changeling's pretty clever about how he goes about things.
I don't know why the changeling doesn't kill Jadzia or Julian when it has opportunities to. But other than the fact that like they don't want to kill their main characters.
Sure, but like, yeah, should they have come up with a better reason for it? Maybe, it's kind of hard to know exactly what the changeling ultimately intended. Like, he probably doesn't want to destroy this ship per se because he doesn't want to kill Odo, and Odo's on the ship. Mm-hmm. And so he might have like intended to like not press things by killing off people he knew were Odo's friends. He didn't want to press the issue. You could probably, without too much trouble, kind of figure out a psychological reason for it. But yeah, you're right. There's a few points where it probably should have acted and didn't.
And they do a good job, I think, kind of trying to trick the audience. Like after they say that Jadzia got a concussion, when they find her knocked out, and they take her off to the sick bay. There's like that shot of O'Brien. And he's kind of like looking around, kind of real like suspiciously, like maybe he's the changeling. And then with Eddington, it's like, hey, Eddington, he's like the new guy we got this season. No one really knows too much about him. Maybe he's the changeling, but that was a fake out. And the way that the changeling impersonated the doctor, so that it could fake the blood sample.
Yeah.
Was really cool. And like the reveal of that, when you see that door open and all of a sudden like there's two Bashirs in frame suddenly, and you're like, oh, it's the doctor who's the changeling.
That was their coolest twist, and one that I did not suspect. It was it was a way to take something like that broadly followed the structure of John Carpenter's movie and throw a kind of a neat twist into it. So yeah, it was a really good time. A good finale with a good cliffhanger.
I don't know if I've ever really like thought of this, like comparing the finales of the different Deep Space Nine seasons, but it is very much in the same style as how we ended season 1. Is they introduced Vedic Wynn, and they're like, this is Vedic Wynn. She's terrible, and she's running for Kai.
Right.
So that's the end of season 1. Season 2 ends with, here's the Dominion, and they can take down a Galaxy-class starship. Watch out. And then season 3 ends with, the changelings are everywhere. So, beware.
Yeah.
And season 4 kind of, I guess, continues that. I guess that's something that they do like throughout the rest of the show as well. So they're thoughtful about trying to do something
I
like
like
that.
their finales. I believe I'm due to see Worf next season. I don't mind that spoiler. I'm pretty 99% sure Worf is in the next season.
Okay. Well, if you're comfortable with that, then I will tell you the very next episode is you will see Worf set foot onto the station.
Yeah, I'll be looking forward to that. I did really enjoy this the It's another one of those where the craft of writing is just, I think, head and shoulders for me above most Star Trek shows. The only one that sort of is tough to beat for me is actually TOS, because I feel like their shows are so tightly written, so kind of at times just perfect little 40 minute episodes, and I do really like that format. But as far as using the episodic format merged with serial, you can't. I mean, even though I know this is still not the best stuff that the show will have to offer, it's already really staked out its territory as the best of that style. I know it's better than Discovery. I know it's better than Picard, and I know it's better than Voyager, and I know it's better than Enterprise. So.
And Next Generation.
Yeah. And I guess that kind of went without saying, but yes. Because Next Generation wasn't even attempting it. There really was very little continuity.
And I love all Star Trek shows. I'm not putting any Star Trek
Same.
shows down. I just want to prop Deep Space Nine up as the best, or as it sounds like we're in agreement on this. The original series and Deep Space Nine together, I think, are the two best Star Trek shows ever made.
I think that's true. Anyway, this has been very fun talking about Deep Space Nine Season 3, and I'm ready to go ahead and start watching Season 4 so I can see Worf with a ponytail.
This will be it for now, and until next time, as always, live long and prosper, y'all.
Listen to the Tex-Trek podcast through Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, or at tex-trek.com. Like us on Facebook at facebook.com/tex-trek, and follow Fatheree on Twitter at TXTrek. Please support us by liking our videos and subscribing to our channel on YouTube. Thank you and take care.